You're listening to the Travis Makes Money podcast presented by GoHighLevel.com. For a free 30-day trial of the best all-in-one digital marketing software tool on the planet, just go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis. What's going on, money makers? Welcome back to the Travis Makes Money podcast, where it's our mission to help you make more money. Today on the show, we're going to be talking a little bit about learning, development, speaking, coaching, quite a few things with my new friend, James Turk. James is an executive coach, keynote speaker, and CEO of the Turk Group, a boutique learning and development firm with over 25 years of experience. He designs leadership, sales, change management, and strategic planning programs for diverse industries. He has a couple of clients that you might be familiar with. Maybe, I don't know. They're kind of small, so maybe you might not recognize them. Spotify, Squarespace, Goldman Sachs, Equinox, just a couple of decently sized companies that trust James to do these types of things for them. So I'm stoked to jump into this conversation with him. But before we do, if you are an entrepreneur or solopreneur, you use multiple softwares for marketing, email, forms, calendars, community management, SMS, etc., you're probably doing it wrong. You owe it to yourself to go check out High Level's all-in-one platform for marketing and automation so that you can get back to focusing on what you know how to do best. They've created an amazing tool that's somehow as simple as it is capable. So join over 3 million other businesses and go to GoHighLevel.com/Travis for a free 30-day trial to see what High Level can do for you. James, what's up, man? Welcome to the show.
Hey, Travis. Good to be here.
Let's go back in time first, because I love asking this question. Tell me how you made your first dollar ever.
Oh, that's a good question. My first dollar ever, truth be told, I think I took some of my sister's things from her dresser and then sold them to some of my friends because I didn't understand. I didn't understand that wasn't how things worked.
Did you get caught?
I did get caught, and I learned a very valuable lesson that I brought with me like later in life. But I think my first legit was I was a kind of an early entrepreneur, and I used to cut yards. So I grew up in Mississippi and lots of lawns and very hot, lots of rain, lots of grass. So I had 12, 13. I hit the ground, and I went and talked to neighbors and said, oh, how much to cut your grass? And because I grew up in an environment where you got kind of like the bare necessities, but anything above that you had to go out and earn yourself, which was a good lesson for me.
Yeah, I've actually very similar for me. It was cutting lawns, mowing lawns, installing sod, stuff like that. Growing up, when I was a teenager, 15, 16, that was like the first thing that I did. And it was very similar. It was like my parents basically paid for all the things that I had to have.
Right.
Even like whatever, basketball shoes for the new season or whatever. But anything above that was like, yep, well, you want a phone? Okay, well, go earn some money and buy yourself a phone because we're not going to do it,
But in hindsight, those were such good, important lessons. I hated them for it at the time, but I'm so grateful as a fully functioning adult that I don't struggle with the idea of a hustle and doing what you got to do to kind of get what you want.
Do you kind of install some of those things yourself in your life?
I do, absolutely. So I try to understand when spending money is a valuable exercise and when it's being kind of frivolous. And sometimes I allow myself to kind of have the frivolous spending and kind of do the thing that, probably doesn't make sense, but it makes me feel good. And there's inherent value to that. But I also know that building a website, or for me, I published this book, and that was something that I ended up kind of doing on my own. And it was a big investment, and the self-publishing world can be very janky and very kind of print it yourself at Kinko's, but I wanted to go, because my name's on it, do it the proper way. So I sourced out who does Random House use and who designed my favorite book cover. So I ended up spending a lot of money on it, but it's going to be money that's going to pay me back five times, right?
And what's the name of the book?
The name of the book is called The Giving Game: Becoming the Leader That Others Want to Follow.
Oh man, such a great and necessary topic. I don't know if you know this, James, but for longtime listeners of the show, they understand the lore behind this, is that the show was initially called Build Your Network. So for 5 years, we talked mostly about relationships, adding value, giving back to people, things like that. Why this book and why now?
So the idea behind the book was it's a giving game, not a getting game. So if I can approach my business, my life, with this idea of like, okay, what's the value add here? Rather than where's mine, what can I do to kind of bring something to the party? So it's been percolating me for a long time. I grew up, my parents were coaches and did a lot of service. We grew up in parochial schools, and just part of that whole thing was like you give back. And then early in my career, I had two managers who just went out of their way to really go and identify kind of what they needed, but really what would my development look like. So they really invested in me early on, helped me see myself differently, and those experiences just kind of shaped like not only who I was, but ultimately how I led others in the company that I run. So that was my kind of life experience. And then the company I run, we do leadership development and coaching, all these things. And if I look at like the core of the business, probably about 50% of the training and coaching is around helping managers who are either new to role or have been in role for a long time who don't really know what to do. So I'm like, well, if I bring this idea of service forward and I think about being of service to this particular audience, what would that look like? So I'm like, let me do a book. And it's essentially, what does the first year look like? And what do you really need to know to actually succeed as a people manager? So that was the idea.
What is a parochial school?
Parochial school.
Parochial school.
Yeah. So that's Catholic school.
Oh, okay. Got
Yeah.
it. Got
Yeah.
it.
So parochial is like a parochial school system. So yeah, there's like, elementary and high school and
Yeah, I was just curious. Just curious.
yeah.
Do you have kids?
No.
Okay. I was
No.
successfully avoided that money pit then.
Yeah. I find other ways to like, homes and other things to kind of dump a lot of money into.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously, I know people know this, but I got to say it in case somebody's listening to the show for the first time. I love my kids, people. Okay. That was a joke. Take it as a joke because that's all it was. Anyway, okay. So back into the story here. Landscaping was the first business.
Yeah.
What was the second one? What did you do after that?
So then I did like just through high school, I worked as a busboy, landed kind of like my dream job at the time as a lifeguard, and I was like the guy for like and it was like in the summertime and I had like the Ray-Bans, convertible,
Oh
and
yeah.
yeah, it's all the things. And then I went off to school and then ended up like in the restaurant business for kind of those years, which I think should be really mandatory for most people. Like working in restaurants really teaches you everything you need to know to be an entrepreneur and just to be successful in life. It's customer service, it's working with money, it's high pressure, it's time management, it's like all the major food groups. So I did that, then moved to Chicago, worked in the galleries there, and worked with a couple of friends. We opened something from scratch. We're like, oh, let's go to Chicago and start a gallery. So we were young enough and naive enough to, not realize what we didn't know.
Sure.
So we kind of got there and we found the space and we ended up building this thing out. And it was in operation for 30 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So it lasted. Then I actually moved from Chicago to New York. And my original thinking here was to move to New York to become a private art dealer. So take the artists we were representing in Chicago, bring them to New York and try to kind of recreate the magic. New York's a much tougher market than Chicago. Chicago is a very easy big city. I love Chicago, but New York it's tough, and New York will look for opportunities to kind of vote you off the island. So I got here, and then I did it for about a year, and then I ended up having to take some like catering gigs and stuff to kind of keep the lights on, and then that kind of just segued me into a whole other path of just getting into sales. I ended up in like as a technical recruiter, and then that landed me on Wall Street and human resources. And then that ultimately landed me into the world of learning and development. And then kind of while I was doing that, I went back to school and studied theater, and then had some success as an actor. And so like human resources, learning and development, theater, all kind of came together in service to kind of what I do now.
Yeah, well, you're a people person at your core, it sounds like, and you had multiple gigs, jobs, entrepreneurial ventures that just made you better at that thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
You seem to still have some sort of an eye for art. Has that been a part of your life in a big way since that time?
It is. So I just enjoy food and art and travel, and I need just in order for me to be an effective human being and an effective business person, I need to kind of feed myself, right?
Yeah.
So that's like it's good books, it's good art, it's life performance is, all those things. It just kind of nurtures that part of my brain,
Yeah.
and which is kind of just gives me balance. And then just kind of, I think it actually forms different types of neural pathways, and just I think it's a kind of a key to being successful.
Yeah, it's for those listening, James has a really nice aesthetic background, and before we hit the record button, he like got up to adjust a plant on his table by like 3 inches to put it like above his shoulder to a certain degree so it would make it, yeah. So I noticed that as like oh, this attention to detail, but obviously some sort of like mental acuity for aesthetic looking things.
No, and we spend a lot of time working with leaders at all levels, talking about just impact and influence, and you talked about like relationships and all those things. But a big part of it is just brand. So what's my brand and what's my presence? So
Yeah,
we send who we are through not only what we say, but body language, how we look, what your background looks like, whether we like it, realize it or not. But all those things go into how the other party is actually going to experience you, and
sure.
depending upon what you're trying to do, if I'm trying to sell them or get their buy-in or just like form a meaningful connection, all that stuff is kind of going into whether or not they're going to kind of buy into it or not, right?
So we mentioned a few of the clients that you have, kind of facetiously in
Mhm.
the intro here: Spotify, Squarespace, Goldman Sachs, Equinox. I talk to a lot of people who sell information essentially for a living, but not a lot of them get to work with companies of that type of stature, with those types of budgets, and that much stakes on the table. How are you able to get your foot in the door at your first big name company that brought in more recognition and credibility to allow you to go to
Great
the other
question.
ones?
So early in my kind of learning and development kind of journey, I worked for other consulting companies. There's like two or three big players, and so I freelanced with them. And in that experience, I was able to get my certifications as an executive coach, master facilitator, all the things. Worked on big names there like Nike and Disney and ExxonMobil. That really helped me kind of just master the craft and really just understand like account management and sales and kind of how things worked. I
Yeah.
also during that time I started seeing some statements of work, and I was like, huh. Look at how much they're charging for me. I was sure would like to get a bigger percentage of what I'm actually being billed out for. So all that was percolating. So I about in like 2015, one of my buyers or a buyer on an account that I was working on through another consulting company at AOL, had left AOL and went to BuzzFeed. And this was when BuzzFeed was probably like 70 people. And, he had reached out and, said like, oh, I think we're looking to do something, can you work with us? It was me and the old account director from the other consulting company. BuzzFeed was too small for their kind of strike zone. The dollars weren't there. So I didn't do anything with it for a while. And like a year later, I was like, I really want to start my own gig and start my own business. And I had the Turk group, but wasn't really doing anything with it. I didn't have any of my own clients. And I just was thinking like, maybe I should call, his name's Regis from BuzzFeed, and see what he ended up doing. And I came so close to not making that call. It's like, oh, he doesn't want to hear from me, and just all the nonsense, all the self-doubt. And I was like, oh, well, who cares? Let me try it. Send him a note, and he's like, oh, good timing. We're ready to move forward with something. And I was like, well, do you want to go through that other consulting company? It's been about a year, and I think I'm outside of my non-compete, but we can go through them, or I can work with you directly, whatever you want to do. So gave him an option, right? So I didn't try to scam or be like sneaky with any of it. But I was like, here's the deal. You got options. He's like, no, I'm more than comfortable to work with you directly. And that was the moment. And so
Mm.
that changed the trajectory. So I went into BuzzFeed and very much approached it like kind of service mindset. So like, where are you? What do you all need? Let's build some stuff. So it was like the first 100 people, 30 of them were leaders. And then they ultimately at some point turned into 3,000. So as that first 100 grew to 300, grew to 500, like I grew with them.
Mm.
And then they
Okay.
started peeling off and going to like Fox, and then going to Squarespace, and going to all these other organizations, Spotify. And when they went, like, hey, we should bring this guy James in here. My
Ah,
entire business, I spent a fortune on this marketing plan probably like 6, 7 years ago, like 15K. Didn't do jack with it
yeah.
because I didn't need it, because I'm very, very lucky. All of my business is referral.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Well,
started earlier on because I just did good work, kept my head down, tenet is like make it, I want to be easy to work with. I want to make
Yeah.
sure what we deliver is high quality, and then just good things happen.
Well, and you were able to maintain great relationships with these people. Like it would not have happened had they not had something to good to say about you when the time came.
Exactly. And in my space, there's a lot of trust required because you're basically, you know, pulling employees out of their day to day, pulling leaders in, and
Yeah. Yeah.
it can go south very quickly.
Yeah. No
Like, who's
kidding.
this
Yeah.
guy? Who brought this guy in?
It's a high trust, high ticket environment.
Exactly.
What do you do to maintain the quality of relationships over time? Sometimes some people that I've found, some people are really good at getting their foot in the door,
Mm.
and then that's it. That then they're the person that 6 years from now calls you and you're like, who is this person again? I know them somewhere and whatever. I'll answer, and then you answer, and they inevitably are asking you for something, and you're like, well, we don't even really know each other. We just met at this thing like 6 years ago, and you're calling me and asking me for a favor. There's got to be more that goes into it. You got to dig the well before you're thirsty. How do you kind of systematize, I guess, that process a little
I'll
bit?
say so. I see every interaction as an opportunity to kind of build a network and a relationship. It doesn't always happen that way. So a lot of what we do is strategic. So we'll have people that we've worked with for like accounts for 6, 7, 8 years, and we just are their go-to for anything in this space. But we do have other accounts that are more transactional. So they'll reach out to us, especially startups, and say like, here's our budget. We want to engage this group, and certainly want to approach it in a way where they're going to want to work with us in the future. With those, I just make sure that there is an opportunity to kind of just follow up in some way that's natural. So just the old school things, like I saw this article, I thought it was really interesting. You might want to check it out and just look for ways to actually kind of just stay in touch with them in ways that make sense. I also try to drive people to LinkedIn, and we're pretty proficient on LinkedIn, and we post like a lot of kind of just points of view, and here are some tips in this area, just to try
Yeah.
to make it interesting for them. So kind of feed them content that is going to be hopefully interesting and relevant, and then want to maintain the relationship, and hopefully that will drive sales at some point later on.
Well, that's one of the most important pieces about creating content, especially like if you don't have a big audience. It can feel a lot of times like you're just shouting into a void and there's no reason to do it, but you never know who's actually seeing the content. It's a much larger volume of people than who engage with the content.
You know,
So just because it doesn't get liked or it doesn't get a lot of comments or shares or saves or whatever other metrics you're using inside of your company to define success does not mean that somebody's not watching that, and then in a year and a half from now they're finally going to have a problem that they know you can solve, and guess who's top of mind because they saw 48 of your videos in that time frame.
absolutely. And then something else I'll share. So our business is business to business, right? So companies come to us and we provide them with solutions, but often companies will come to us and they're just too small. So they're like 40 people, 50 people, and it just doesn't make sense for them to bring us in. So I ended up noticing that I was saying no to all of these like smaller organizations. So it's like before the pandemic, I'm like, you know what? I think there's another business here. So rather than just do B2B, I think there's probably a B2C. So I think I can probably do some type of open enrollment workshop with some of these kind of core programs and let people send, if they only have 1 or 2 managers, let them come to these events, and then they can kind of learn the content that the Spotify folks and all these other people are learning. But then they can also build a network of other peer managers in
Hmm.
the New York area or whatever kind of markets that we did. So we probably did all in the total, maybe 4 of those. So kind of 4 of these events, never made money. I was always like scrambling to kind of fill seats, and people loved them, but what it turned out to be was like just a really good marketing exercise because it
Yeah.
forced us to kind of build the assets and the marketing, go to market with this is what we're doing. It's great. We would usually cover our cost. But then with the empty seats, if there was any kind of relationship that I was trying to build or anyone that I was prospecting, hey, Travis, I have an empty seat on the upcoming session. Do you want to send someone? I'll comp it for you.
Hmm.
Right. So I was like, oh my God, that'd be great. We'd love that. So it just gave me this platform to be able to kind of do what we do it well, some good marketing around it, invite people in and kind of comp things. Or if someone's thinking about using us, like, why don't you send someone to like observe it or audit it? And it was great. And still think it's a good business idea, but it just requires a level, we're so busy with our primary business
Yeah.
that I, really haven't done much with it in the last couple of years. But the core of that was be willing to, do things and comp things. So if I want people to like my business, be confident enough to give it away for real inexpensively or free, so
Yeah.
that you can kind of build that. And I learned that back in the art world way back when.
Yeah, I love the idea of throwing events to maintain relationships
Yeah,
because it's a great way to bring people together. Like if you can be the connector to a
yeah,
group of highly qualified, uh, people that are within your space, it will always, even if you can't exactly measure the ROI right
yeah,
now, there is always one to be had.
absolutely.
Like if you can be the person who brings smart people together, because what happens is, man, is like we as people are always searching for commonality. Like when you
Yeah,
meet somebody new who you've never met before, you're
yeah,
searching for some form of commonality. Well, if you're at an event that, a boutique, less than 50-person event, maybe 50 to 100 max, and everybody's meeting each other and they don't know who they are, what's one of the first questions that they're going to ask that person that they're meeting? Like, oh, how do you know James?
exactly.
And then you are top of mind in 100 different conversations that happen throughout the course of that evening. And if they happen to do something else together, they happen to partner, do a deal, do a business, guest on each other's podcast, do an event together. If anything comes out of that interaction, then you like keep this kind of top of mind place in their mind
Totally.
because you've added a tremendous value to them and introducing them to other really high quality people. So I love that way of staying in touch.
And it's just a good way to engage in sales. So Squarespace happened. Squarespace, it was a referral. They reached out, oh, we're interested in you. And I said, well, why don't you come? I've got a seat at one of these workshops. Why don't you come to the workshop, get a sense for us? And then from there, we were able to build a proposal, and that's how I got the work.
Hmm.
Right. And had they not been able to come and like kind of like feel it and experience it, I don't know if they would have signed off on it.
Yeah, well, it's a big
Right.
rapport builder too.
Totally, totally,
Yeah,
totally.
it creates the relationship and builds rapport. Like it,
Yeah.
events to me, it's an environment that accelerates know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's going to take you 12 weeks of sending emails. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I
To,
feel
to
so bad.
nurture the lead.
Have you ever done like cold sales?
Yeah, I did 6 years of door to door.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, it is a good training. But back in my recruiting days, like we would have to do 20 cold calls a day. And
Yeah.
my boss was like, she was fantastic, but she was tough. She's like, get on that phone. And you'd be like, hi, we never talked before. And it was just so painful. So when I see all these LinkedIn folks who are, having to kind of just, try to reach out to break through, if you're listening right now, keep it up. Someone's going to respond to you. So but I feel for you. That's like
Yeah.
that's a tough day, but somehow that's going to make sense big picture, and that experience is going to serve you well.
For sure, it will build that resilience that's
Oh yes,
required to succeed, no matter what path you choose.
true. It is true.
James, I appreciate you coming on the show today, man. It's been really, really awesome. One more time, name of the book, and what's the best place for people to pick up a copy of that book? Is there a certain website you want them to go to, or is
No,
Amazon
sure.
okay?
So thank you for having me. It's been fantastic. I could talk to you for a couple more hours. The website is theturkgroup.com. On the website, you'll see links to the book. Within the book, we have a tool called the First 45 Playbook, which is all around if you're new to role or new to organization, what do you really need to do in the first 45 days? If you go to the website, you can buy the book, but you can also just download the playbook for the first 45 days for free. Book's not for free. And then there's videos of me talking about different topics and some of our research papers. So do that, or the book is on Amazon as well.
theturkgroup.com. Go pick up a copy of James's book over there. It's all about giving. It's all about relationships, which you guys know that is right up my alley. So if you're listening to the show, I know you'll benefit greatly from reading James's book as well. James, thank you so much again for taking the time. I know you're a busy guy. Everybody else listening, tuning in, remember, money only solves your money problems, but it's a little bit easier to solve the rest of your problems if you got some money in the bank. So let's solve that problem first here on the Travis Makes Money podcast. Thanks for tuning in. Catch you next time. Peace out.